Okay, good evening, one and all, and welcome to the Georgetown Tea House. Today, we're looking at mental health and the festive season. The title of our broadcast is Holiday on Your Mind. We will start by introducing our great um, panel this evening, and I will start with Sharmin. Sharmin, please introduce yourself.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for this great opportunity and thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm Sharmin Prince and I am a certified nonconformist with an uninhabited spirit,
Nice.
unwavering honesty, and remarkable vulnerability. My life experiences have become the very ladder I climb, and every step is taken with a unique blend of precision and occasionally spontaneity. I'm,
Okay.
I'm a fearless risk taker and I embark on unexplored paths. Qualifications hold secondary importance to me, as my true expertise lies in the mastery of life itself.
Okay, great to hear that. Antoine, later you can got to unbundle all of that. Pablo, you.
Me ain't touching
I,
though.
I need I need therapy after listening to that boy.
I know me
I
ain't
need
touching that with a
therapy.
barge pole.
I
That's a
need
black
touch.
woman talking to you. Your head good hour.
I telling you,
Yeah, go
that's
ahead,
that's
Pablo.
impressive.
Introduce yourself.
That's impressive. Okay, everyone. Yeah, my the name on my passport is James Paul Senior. I am a retired pill pusher. I can say that I was a drug dealer, and I'm still recovering from that. So I worked with Pfizer for about 20 years, and in fact, one of the drugs that I promoted was Zoloft. So I have limited expertise on this topic of seasonal affective disorder and depression. But right now, I'm dabbling in poetry, music, podcast. I have a podcast on Pablo Speaks on Spotify every Sunday at 6 p.m. And I also have a podcast starting up in January again called Decarna, which is dedicated to celebrating Guyanese Creole and global Creole culture through music, poetry, storytelling, and edutainment. So I'm happy to be here to lend whatever limited expertise I have to this subject today. So thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Antoine.
Thanks, Andy. It's good to be here and see you again after a while. Charmaine, it's a pleasure to meet you. Pablo, pleasure to meet you too. Anthony, my namesake. But I'm gonna have to sue your mother for choosing the English version of my name without my permission. But I'll talk to you later. Um, Pleasure meeting you too. So my name is Antoine Craigwell, and I'm president and CEO of DBGM, which is an organization that I founded in 2013 after a documentary I did called "You Are Not Alone" in 2012. Um, I founded this organization, which is focused on mental health to prevent Black gay men suicide. Subsequent to that, founding the organization, which celebrates 10 years this year, I have launched a mental health conference that is unique globally for LGBTQ Black and people of color, because nowhere else in the world is anybody focusing on LGBT people of color, Black and people of color, and their mental health, how it is surviving in their own communities, in their countries, with their mental health. And particularly, I pay attention to Guyana, um, and the amount of LGBT in Guyana who are struggling with mental illness, suicidality, depression, and so forth. Pablo, I just heard you talking about some of the work that you do, and Charmin, from your brief introduction, we also launched last year an Ancestral Institute. And the Ancestral Institute is intended to reconnect with indigenous and ancestral traditional healing practices with contemporary psychology to see what the mix is to create something that is identifiable for Black and people of color. And I say that because we argue that as long as humans have walked the face of the earth, we've always struggled with mental illness. Mental illness is a part of who we are, just like our sexual orientation is part of who we are. It's on a spectrum. It's the white people who have come and told us that our sexuality is only binary, male and female. It is the white people who came and told us that our ancestral practices were evil, were demonic, because they did not understand them. And through enslavement,
True.
our traditions have been erased, literally excised from us. And in its place was put a white Christian belief system that does nothing for us, that fractured our families and our communities. And so, contemporary mental health, contemporary mental health care is Western European and American paradigm structured that Black and people do not identify with. So the Ancestral Institute is a way of saying, let's reconnect. Let's reconnect with our ancestors, what they did to take care of themselves and each other. What foods, what drumming, what music, what dancing, what language. How did they take care of each other? And in taking care of each other, they took care of their mental health. Interestingly enough, the World Health Organization, as well as the European Union, have both within recent years said that when we focus on global mental health, we need to focus on the indigenous traditional forms of care that our ancestors used. We need to focus on the whole person, not the individual. And
All
so
right.
that's
And
where the
Antoine,
Ancestral Institute comes
let me
in.
pause you there for a minute.
I'm
You
done.
know,
I'm done. I'm
I
done.
know you like to get rolling, but
No, no, no. I was coming to the end there,
this is
you
the
know.
intro stage.
Yeah, I was
All
winding
right,
up. What's wrong with you?
all right. And joining us today is a Bajan brother who's had some, upfront and close experience with mental health. Anthony, please introduce yourself. I think he went frozen. Anthony, can you hear us? All right, he
Yeah,
might be
he's
frozen.
frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen. All right.
Maybe I talk so much that you got frozen.
The man in the chill
All right,
zone.
folks, this is the Georgetown Tea House, and the subject matter is holidays on your mind. We're looking at mental health and the holiday season. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Anthony, you with us?
I
Hmm.
can now hear you. I was
Okay,
losing.
cool.
I was getting poor connection just now, so I
Right.
didn't
Okay,
finish the
quickly
last part of Antonio.
introduce yourself. Uh,
Okay, I'm Ryan Anthony Hackett. I use Anthony is my middle name. Long time friend of Nancy. I don't have as much experience as the other panelists here right now, but what I have is I had hands-on experience. My mom, belated mom, may say she was bipolar, and had some experience that I witnessed that in the process of going through those experience, I had limited understanding of what her diagnosis was. Is only when I went and did my independent research and I educate myself with certain stuff, and then kind of retract on certain things that I witnessed that I had a deeper understanding of what was going on. But what I could say about my experience in Barbados, where I'm from, there's a serious stigma attached to any mental health illness. And because of that, I find a lot of people are kind of reluctant to reach out. And then there's no infrastructure that kind of catered for the
All right.
basically deals with
Anthony. Okay,
everything.
go ahead.
And because of the stigma assigned to that platform, I guess that's why people who may just have the mild situation of depression or stuff, they kind of avoid going to the institute for counseling and even treatment. But I was very interested in what Antonia said just now because I strongly believe in the traditional way of dealing with certain illness, especially from the herbal aspects and stuff like that, versus the pharmaceutical way. And what I would say is that I witnessed that the period of time, which was over 10 years, that my mom was on medication, I wouldn't really say it did her any justice. It only created additional problems. And then I witnessed as she aged with the situation, when you had situation where you might go attack maybe now and then one in the next 5 years, as she aged, it started to get closer, maybe a year apart. Then it started to get like months apart till they get like very regular.
He's frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen. Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
all I
Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah, and Anthony, go out and coming back, cause we certainly want to get your story. All right, so go out and coming back. This is the Georgetown Tea House, and we'll be back in 60 seconds.
Hello, everybody. This is Santa Claus wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I wish every mother, every father, every little boy and girl a Merry Christmas. Oh, yes. It's Christmas, it's Christmas. Have a happy time. It's Christmas. Have a merry time. It's Christmas. Have a happy time. It's Christmas. Have a merry time. All through the year we've waited. All through the year we've worked. All through the year we've prayed so hard to see this day, oh Lord. Yes, it's Christmas. Have a happy time. It's Christmas. Have a merry time.
All right, thank you. Are you okay there, Anthony? Better connection where you are?
yeah
All right, cool. All right,
yeah I shift my location, so I hope it's a little better right now. Everyone can
all
hear
right,
me?
cool. Yeah,
Yep.
certainly, loud and clear. Let's get the conversation going. Um, Picking up
Hello?
from part of what Ryan would have said about Bajan folks, not wanting to acknowledge
I
the
don't know if
mental
you can
health
hear me,
issue.
but I could barely hear you cutting
Yeah,
in and
we can hear
cutting
you.
out.
We can hear you. Um, Starting with you, Shaman.
Okay.
The typical Guyanese or West Indian person, come Christmas time,
Pardon me?
mental health is not going to be one of the things on their mind. It's going to be the meat for the pepper pot, the money for buy, the toys, etc. How do we know? All right, and this is the first question we're dealing with. How do we know? How can someone tell? Okay, hey, Anansi, you got an issue. You need to pause it and check. What can be happening? What can I be doing to tell me, okay, I need to pause and check my mental health during the holidays?
Thank you for that question. That's a loaded question. However, self-awareness is very important. Um, and those around us have to be present in order to identify their differences or a change in behavior. So if those around us are busy preparing for the
Apologies for the
holiday,
connect.
right? If they're busy preparing for the holidays, it's actually impossible for them to be present enough to see that there is a change in behavior for me, right? Or for their loved ones. In Guyana, when we see symptoms of mental health, we call it she's moody. He is in one of their moods, and it's acceptable behavior, right? Um, I I just I want to get into something that Antoine raised so bad, but I'm gonna wait about the racial aspect of mental health.
No, definitely, we're gonna get there. We're
I
gonna get
know,
there.
so I'm gonna pause, but I think that if we're not self-aware and if those around us aren't present, aren't educated about mental health, they will see symptoms and behaviors and ignore it.
And ignore it. Okay, Antoine, how can we tell? How can the average Guyanese or Caribbean person tell? Hey, you need to pause. Something ain't quite right.
So, Charmin, just a last bit of what she was talking about just now. Charmin said education is important. Providing education and information helps to combat shame and stigma, and it provides greater awareness. In the Guyanese context, as a straight up Guyanese from Stanleyton, New Amsterdam, when you see your mother getting herself all busy, don't bother me now. I gotta get ready for Christmas. I gotta plant the rice. I gotta set the ginger beer. I gotta put aside the thing for the pepper pot, and I gotta make the black cake. And I gotta broke down the house. I gotta do this. And she's doing it all by herself. And you know that she's working as well, and coming home and pushing herself until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to do all these little different things. So she's not getting enough sleep. Or you have a man who's the house, the father or a brother or some other person, the male person in the house, who stays out longer than normal and comes in always with a little bit of smell on his breath. He and them boys being by the rum shop, taking a little fine thing. Okay? They've been take a bounce. They've been take a tops. But this is every night leading up to the holidays. Man, I get in the holiday spirit, not allow me. I get in the holiday spirit. This is what we just do. Okay? And it is assumed and taken as normal behavior. But then we may also see that some of our family members might be sleeping a little bit too long, or they don't want to get out of bed. Or, man, look, I ain't feel like combing my hair today, man. I there home. I there by me. I ain't got to worry about nobody. Okay? Or they don't eat. Or they're not taking a shower. Okay? And there are little things, and then maybe you might see some irritation You might see some annoyances, things that you know would normally like water run off their back. Suddenly they're jumping for you, the dump jumping down your throat for little or nothing at all. They're just going off on you. Not, I ain't saying going off as in going off mad, because that's a form of stigmatization. But going off as in going off, flying off the handle. You understand what I'm saying? Then is when, because we don't know, and as Charmin was just saying, always a mood, always so you stay, always, well, it's this time of the year, and well, we just got you just getting the thing, and you just want, and they just want to do the thing their own way. So don't get in the way, stay out of the way. And that is how, because we don't know, we excuse it, we ignore it, we push it aside. Because wait till the holidays done, and you can come back to normal. We know that something is wrong. We know that there's something amiss, but we're not going to know exactly what it is and how to step in to address it, what to do. We don't know that because we don't have the language, we don't have the information, we don't have the education about it. You understand? We good,
Okay.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, Pablo, let's take it. Let's take it along the personal line now that we've had Charmin and Antoine talk to us. As you sit now, can you recall a moment growing up where you may have felt lost, depressed, really down, and can you recall how you dealt with it during Christmas time?
Well, during Christmas time, I can't say yes because that's a happy time. Um, Perhaps, well, just to kind of reframe things, my mom was a psychiatric nurse, right? She worked at the mental hospital in New Amsterdam, Antoine, and for many years, and and she would occasionally bring home a patient for home care. She would do private home care. So we had a room at the back of the house, and there was always, well, not always, occasionally they would have a patient there, female patient typically. I remember Pansy being one of them. And so when they were there during the holidays, um, that was a nice time because it was having an extra people in the house. As a young kid, it's always fascinating. And Pansy was a good cook and that type of stuff. But for me personally, Christmas was I was an outdoors kind of guy, and you had your toys, you had your guns, your caps, and your arrow and your bows and all of that stuff. So it was a fun time. But I do remember having friends who were like from single family homes, and they had issues with money and finances, and they would often come over by our home, and you would kind of see the sadness, because when it was time for like lunch or dinner, right, they wouldn't go. They had no place to go. So I remember I would be sitting, my sister and I would be sitting having lunch, and this friend would be on the stairs, peeping through the door, like just drooling. And mom would say, "Come in, man, come in," and he would come in and have dinner with us or whatever. So I imagine that must have been traumatic for him, as a young child, not being able to partake in the Christmas activities that the average person or family would be able to partake in. But for me
Great.
personally, I can't say that I've had
Can say,
any of those
okay.
feelings during the Christmas time. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. From a personal standpoint, can you recall, growing up in Barbados at a moment, a time during the holiday seasons where, depression came in, sense of loneliness, and how would you have dealt with that?
Um, well, I can't really recall in terms of holidays, in terms of Christmas time, but there were other occasions where the depression would come in, but then one was facing that type of way because it's only in the later stages that it was kind of open up for the whole family to be aware. It was a moment where she tried to deal with it on her own, and maybe like one of her personal friends would know more details than us. But as I say, as she aged with it, it turns that the episodes were coming kind of more closer, and they reached a stage where she kind of kept it as a secret anymore. And then through a company occasion is where we find out is that what we believe in our mind would have been the first initial visit was actually one of the numerous visits. So then the doctors who bring her on a page and tell her, well, you have to involve your family and let them know because it's hard to be living amongst people and you're facing with certain challenges and they don't have no idea what you're facing. But similar to what Antoine said just now, sometimes some of the basic moves that you would take for granted, man, somebody just being miserable, or sometimes those were the beginning stages of people going into a stage that you find out after what was the type of stage. Because when I researched on, I put it was a stage between manic and depression. And it's only on researching that I had a better understanding of what was going on there. We have a stage when somebody could go in a depressive mode, and then a stage that the same individual could almost seem a little bit harsh, not really aggressive, but harsh sometimes verbally. And if you don't understand what you're facing there, you might respond back to suit what you might think might be offensive because you're not saying that, no, this body is going through something.
Mhm.
So it's only looking back after like certain things was highlighted, you kind of like even feel bad within yourself, certain like situation where you could have said nothing or had a different approach if you was aware. You understand? But then when the time now is like use your experience, you understand, to better the situation, or in my stage right now, I try to use my experience to be supportive for people because a lot of people who don't want to deal with it on themselves sometimes don't even know what they're going through. And then,
Mhm.
in my opinion, now is when they start to
Uh, Pity has such a bad connection. Um, Antoine and Charmin, I am going to let you guys, respond directly to Anthony and somebody right now in his position with dealing with whether it's a brother, but a family member in that state, and how should they approach it. But before that, I want you to respond to something that Pablo said, Antoine, from your own experience. He said, he says, oh, looking back at Christmas, mm, those were happy times. Should we, the listener, take that literally, that it was just generally happy times? How much do you think that the whole how whole sense of tradition and the indoctrination and what Christmas meant to us factored into Pablo responded and saying, it was all happy time.
I think, and I see Charmaine looking like she's smiling there because she probably gonna know where I'm coming from here a little bit. I think what we have to remember for as Guyanese is that the concept of Christmas is a white European colonialist influence, plain and simple. Christianity, by its very nature, is not in it's not indigenous to Black people. And there are some Black people who will want to fight me on this one and say, but how Christians were first in East Africa before the Arabs in about 600 to 700 AD. I'm like, that's all right. So before 600 to 700 AD, what happened? Black people had a religion, they had a belief. Black people had a millennia of cultural traditions. So put that one aside. And I think it was a matter of adaptation and fitting in with the environment that we lived in. That our parents dreaded the arrival of Christmas because also of the commercialization, all of the expenses and the food and the presents and all the new furniture and the new floor polish and the new linoleum and the new clothes and everything. And it's a whole lot of money. And consider that in the preceding 6 to 8 weeks before Christmas time come round, your parents, especially your mother, cutting she ass every which way she could to throw that box hand. So that when the time come for she draw down she box hand, she got the lump sum of money that she can go to JP Santos, and she can go to Bata, and she can go to the supermarket, and she can go to, you understand, Retainer Richter and Refords and all them things, and she can go and shop and buy and come home. She can go to Getty's Grant and get a furniture set for higher purchase that she can done pay down for by time Christmas Eve day. So for children, we did not see those trials and tribulations. All we saw were the end result. All we saw was the production side of it. The planting the rice, the gathering the this, they buying the gas, they're buying two 5-pound gas, 2 20-pound gas cylinders, because you're baking whole day, whole night. Brown cake, black cake. You're cooking pepper, you're cooking cocoa, you're making roti, you're cooking up a style like you got bag what? You're putting up Christmas tree, and you're putting spun fiberglass angel hair over the Christmas tree to simulate snow. You're putting cotton wool on the branches on the artificial tree to make branches, to make snow on the branches. You got gifts. You got expensive hanging ornaments on that Christmas tree. And I know because I used to go down the Christmas tree and pull them off and break them just to see what's going to happen. But don't talk about the cocktail I used to get, but it's a whole other story. But, and I'm saying all of this because it is perpetuated from generation to generation. That because this is what our mothers did, that we have to replicate it. And our children come to expect it. And if our children don't get it, because they're going to be questioned by their other friends, their children, what you had for Christmas? What you got for Christmas? Show me what you got. Right? And when you say, well, we don't celebrate Christmas, or I didn't get it, they can look at you like, you ain't got money. They family poor. He can go home and tell him, but hey, you know them people next door, they ain't got no damn children, ain't get no Christmas gift, the poor. You understand? And that separately sets up a kind of poverty stigma when it may or may not be true. And so to avoid that shame and stigma, you are going to continue to perpetuate generation after generation, year after year, providing this whole big Christmas thing. I said to somebody the other day, I was looking for a flight to go to Guyana. Probably I would have left last week to come back early in January because it's been a while since I experienced a real good Guyanese Christmas. What is a real good Guyanese Christmas?
All right. Hold that question. That's a good question for us to explore and lighten things up a little. Sharmin, I'll tackle you first. What's a good Guyanese Christmas?
A good Guyanese Christmas is 10 days of stress and 2 days of bliss. Because the 10 days before Christmas Eve day is a lot of stress in the house because the house was broken up and the house got to be rearranged and all the entire list that Antoine listed. But then on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, you have all these nice food and the new shorty pajama and the new clothing and the gifts. And then Boxing Day, it's a repeat. But then after that, reality steps in for the parent that is poor. Because the excitement of Christmas, it may prolong to the 6th of January,
January
12th night.
12th night.
After 12th night, that's where like the 13th night is stress because
Our
the
payback is
reality
money.
of the down payments, the installments, the repo man coming to repossess the items that your parents are unable to pay for. It becomes stressful, and then children have to return to school, and they need school supplies. So, but for those 12 days of Christmas, for a lot of children, because of what was perpetuated and what was taught, it's excitement. Christmas is an exciting time. In some households, that's the only time you eat pepper pot. That's the only time you eat homemade bread. That's the only time you eat baked chicken and all these nice foods. And thereafter, and that's the only time you get gifts. So it's exciting for children and it's traumatic for others.
Okay. Pablo, what's your definition of a good Guyanese Christmas?
Well, it's a cultural thing, right? So for me, there are specific items that I feel has to be there for to have a Guyanese Christmas, right? So let's begin with like Christmas Eve night. Christmas Eve night was a night in New Amsterdam, at least, where the young kids back in my time, and I'm probably older than Antoine, it would
Thank you.
would have that's your night to be an adult, right? You could go out and you could smoke and you could drink and you could do all of that stuff, right? So we got that one night. So that to me is a Guyanese Christmas from my Borby's perspective as a young kid, right? When you come home, Christmas Eve, Christmas morning, the house is a brand new house, right?
Mhm.
You can't have no old curtain. There ain't no Guyanese
Mhm.
Christmas, right? And the house got the smelling. You gotta get your baked chicken, your roast pork, your garlic pork. Everything got the smell in the house. You're feeling good,
Ay.
and you dare not go and touch the food, because even though your mother in sleep all night, she eyes, she ears tune into that pot and everything. You could barely go and open the pot. It's James, what you doing, boy? So you got to bear your chafe until breakfast in the morning, right? Okay. So toys, you gotta have as a young boy, you gotta have your gun. The girls gotta have their dolly and all of that stuff. And maybe it's not the way it is right now because the world has changed from the time I was a kid back in the 70s. Now these kids are into their gadgets and all that kind of stuff. So maybe those definitions have changed. But you gotta have your pepper pot in terms of food, right? Boxing Day, you gotta have your masquerade, right? You gotta have your ginger beer. You gotta have family and friends coming over, and you're going from house to house, especially on Boxing Day, and you're eating and drinking and having a good time. So there's a lot of people getting together and having a fun time. You may have the masquerade going in Borbies in New Amsterdam, going around the town, and people are following them. And there's got to be Lang Lady and Mad Cow, right?
And Mother
And you
Sally.
got the man in the skittle drum and thing, And
Mhm.
so These are things, elements that are necessary for a good Guyanese Christmas. And going on towards after Boxing Day, the next event is All Year's Night. That's a big deal. You're gonna have to be a dance. It's an All Year's Night dance. Usually in New Amsterdam, it's either at prisons or at the fire station, right? So
Or
those
town
are the two
hall.
main dance, exactly,
Or
or
town
town hall,
hall.
exactly. So you gotta have that, and then New Year's Eve, New Year's now, you know, you have it's a new year, and typically things start to taper off. You're thinking about going back to school and all that kind of stuff. So those would be the things that would have to be present for me to say it's a Guyanese Christmas.
All right. Let's go back to the harder topic now. Antoine and Charmin, you would have heard Anthony talk about his experience with a bipolar parent.
Point
Um,
of correction, with a parent who was living with bipolar, because the bipolar wasn't the parent.
Sorry about that. Okay, I stand corrected. All
And
right.
this is
So,
and just like Charmin introduced, it is the direction that that mental health is taking today in a person-centered perspective towards mental health, towards psychology, which is all again part of the whole person. Because the description that you used to talk about Anthony's mother is the contemporary psychological um, individual pathological perspective. It's the pathology before the person.
Mhm.
You understand?
mhm. All
Sorry.
right. So let me get to the question. Yes, and Anthony described the situation having a parent living with bipolar. How, Shaman and Antoine, how should one deal with such? First of all, how do you recognize it if it's a case where it wasn't communicated to you? You're young, maybe teenager. What? How should someone in that household um deal with that situation? I'll start with you, Antoine.
For family members who don't have that kind of information or the knowledge about understanding bipolar, and as Anthony was describing, he subsequently learned from his own research what bipolar is and how it manifests and the stages, the process through which somebody goes, the swing. It is possible that a person who is struggling with bipolar could be in the rest period between extremes. And that rest period can last upwards of 2 to 3 weeks. It could extend beyond that. But there may be something that may happen, a memory, an event, a memory of an event, a smell, a touch, something can send a person in any one of the two extreme directions, either manic or major depressive. For people who really don't understand or know or have the information, it is difficult for them to fathom and understand what is happening, what's going on with their loved one, with their parent or their family member. And what they would typically do is just simply ignore them. Simply, all right, they gone into the mood. Let me gonna left them alone. Okay? They're gonna come out to it. Get them some time, get them some space, get them some time. Let them bubble. They're gonna come out to it. And we leave them alone. That may or may not be dangerous because without the knowledge and the information on how to respond to someone who is bipolar that you may not recognize when that person is up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and they scrubbing steps and washing down and doing all this work, that's the manic phase. And they're not sleeping for 24, 48, 72 hours. And they're going. I got a lot of work to do. Just get out to me.
Eating
Move out
high.
to me. Left me
Yeah.
alone. Or they're on the flip side, the other extreme, which is major depressive. I ain't feel like doing nothing. I ain't getting out of bed. I ain't want to talk to nobody. Y'all left me alone now. And the snapping and the rowing and the finding fault and the picking and the grousing the going on. And so when family members don't know what is happening there, they will just leave that person alone. But it is when that person is in any one of those two extreme states that they are actually at their most vulnerable. Because in any one of those two extreme states, they
It's
could
true.
become massively suicidal. Some people think that because you're dealing with major depression, that you could be suicidal. Yes, but you can also be dealing with suicide in the manic phase. Because if you're going through a manic phase and you're not sleeping, then it means that your brain does not have the opportunity to flush itself out and rest and recharge. So you've got a buildup of calcium ions on the nerve endings in the brain, and the brain is beginning to slow down in its functioning. And that then will lead the person to seriously consider suicide in the manic phase. Man, they were so lively. They were up
It's
every
true.
day. They were going.
Chemical imbalance.
You understand? Or they could be on the major depressive side. And in that extreme, they can just simply, you know what? I just give up. I'm done. So when the family members without knowledge and information do not have that information and are able to observe what's going on, then just left them alone now. They're going through that. They're going through. Must be the time of the month if it's a woman. Or just left you alone. You know how we stay. He gonna come out today. He can bounce back. Don't worry. He gonna come out. Or if the behavior somewhat seems abnormal or bizarre, you know what? We got to pray for him. We got to carry to the church and pray for him. Okay? We can all get on our knees and we can ask the pastor to come over and we can have a little prayer gathering and ask the Lord to intervene and to touch him and make him well, and let Jesus be the great healing physician to come and lay his hand on him and heal him. That's the influences that we're dealing with. Because I can go into a conversation now about how Christianity has contributed significantly to mental health stigma and discrimination. But I'm
Well,
gonna leave that one alone for the time
yeah,
being.
yeah, for the time being. Anthony, listening to Antoine, did you hear anything familiar that as he's speaking,
Well,
were you able to
I
were you able to
graph.
visualize?
Well, I graph a few, but due to my connection again, which I apologize again for in and out. I grasp some major points that I made, right? But I think in a nutshell is a chemical imbalance in the brain. And it just goes back to show how important food, nutritional is to everyone, because the deficiency of certain um what you say every day, what the body needs from minerals, the vitamins and stuff like that, right? And the deficiency for your brain, other vital organs. And when you have a chemical imbalance, and it can happen from different sources,
Okay, we having some problems in BVI there. Are you still with us, Anthony?
Yeah,
body.
he's
And
frozen.
hello,
Yeah, we're hearing you.
can you hear me? Yeah, even your thoughts or when you're going through a depressive mode, that alone could change the chemistry of your body. Once that chemistry is changed, a lot of things can happen beyond your control.
Okay.
You
Anthony,
understand? So I
do,
believe
do this for me. Do this for me,
in
Anthony. Remove your video and just go audio.
I didn't hear you
Re-
just now.
Remove your video, all right, and just go audio. Let's see if it stabilizes. Right, come off of video and then just use your audio and speak.
Okay.
Oh, it totally went out.
I wanted to piggyback on something that
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
He mentioned about Christianity. That's one aspect. But oftentimes, when family members exhibit mental mental illness, the symptoms of mental illness, the first thing that many Guyanese say, somebody do you. We have to carry you out. Somebody do it. And all of the symptoms are mental health related, but it's somebody do you. And going back to what Antoine said earlier, it's all about the indoctrination and also how we were socialized, right? If a family member is in the house and they're showing signs and symptoms of, well, the example is bipolar. At one time, they're at one extreme, and the next time, they're at polar opposite. My encouragement to you is go and educate yourself. We have the internet where information overload is available. Go and educate yourself. Learn about what's happening to your family member, especially if they have a diagnosis. I have my own issues with the diagnosis, but that's not why we're here. So we'll just talk about, I'm going to try to remain focused. Learn about whatever diagnosis your family member was given according to their symptoms. When a family member is in the manic stage, their sympathetic nervous system is in fight or flight, survival mode. You might say something that can trigger them. So if you can educate yourself and understand what's happening, you can be the best support system, even better than medication. Engage them. Oftentimes, when persons are exhibiting symptoms, we isolate them. Nobody wants to deal with them. So engage them in open conversation, have conversation, foster open communication, talk with them. How you doing? You'll get to understand more of what's going on, what's happening with them. Create routines, right? If they get up in the morning, you get up, you help them to create routines. Go take a walk or even accompany them on the walk. Help them to manage stress. Stress and trauma are on the same continuum. So if they can manage their stress level, you can help them to manage their symptoms and provide support. There's so many support groups available. Find a support group. Find the family of whatever the diagnosis and join a support group because it helps you. It helps you to become educated. It helps you to become aware, and it helps you to be more compassionate with your family member and even yourself, because a lot of family members experience vicarious trauma because of that member of the family with a diagnosis.
Okay, thank you for that. Anthony, can you hear us?
It's true.
Can you hear us, Anthony?
Hello?
Yeah, yeah. Ah, it's just so bad. Medication.
Hello?
Yeah, you hearing us? This is very bad. All right. I'll shift to you a little, Pablo.
Mhm.
Sharman, spoke a little about, the medication and that kind of thing. Well, what was your experience working and dealing with this issue? And what did you see in terms of results and all that?
Right. Well, my clients were mainly psychiatrists, neurologists, and nurses in that field, in that mental health field, nurse practitioners, etc. So, of course, I was focused on the medication side of it, but quite often we would have CME education programs in which they would cover topics that involved a combination. In fact, I was advised that the ideal thing was really, a combination of factors, not just the pill, right? It was the therapy, it was the exercise, the diet. All of those factors played a big part in in treating these symptoms, right? And of course, a supportive family. You've got to have, as everyone the panelists mentioned, the family has to be knowledgeable. If they don't have the information, they have to go and find the information so they can understand what their loved one is going through, right? And not respond in anger, but be more empathetic and supportive. Um, as in fact, most of my physicians, the neurologists especially, they would sometimes take me and I would be accompany them on. I had a guy who was a neurosurgeon, one of my clients, and he would kind of show me the science of the brain, the anatomy of the brain, and what goes on with someone who has bipolar or a schizophrenic. There's actually some physical structures in their brain that's different, based on what he told me, and so it's sometimes a very difficult and challenging condition to treat because there's a structural thing. It's not like you could give them a pill and it could raise the serotonin levels and then they feel better. There's something there that they were born with or that was triggered by some event or something. So that becomes even more challenging, especially for the manic depressive, where there's a combination of symptoms. But for me, my focus was really on understanding what indications my drug had, which was Zoloft, which was, panic disorder, anxiety, depression, SAD as well, and PTSD as well. I think PMS. So I would focus on those discussions. That's kind of where my focus was, because I'm trying to sell, trying to sell and get those prescriptions, that type of stuff. But and that's, looking back, for me, it was always a conflict because I'm here pushing pills, right? And of course, the more the doctor prescribes, the more I make. But then we are complicit in terms of um, influencing these doctors with our heavy marketing and all that stuff. Back when I started doing sales, I think it was 1994. That was the last year. That was the first year when advertising was allowed. You couldn't, it was illegal to advertise drugs in the 90s and 80s. But in 94 or 95, it became legal. And you see what happens now. You can't turn on the TV without seeing the drug commercial. So we've become a society that feels that we have to have a pill when we go to see the doctor, you know, and that's problematic, you know. So I would leave my comments there, and let the other panelists.
I'm
Oh,
so happy you called it by its right name, drug.
Right. Thank you.
on on
Yeah.
on the issue of drug, treatment treatment, Antoine. I mean, the holidays is it's just a short period of time. 12 days, 1 month, however you choose to look at it. How do we treat someone having a mental health episode over the course of the holidays? How do we approach treatment?
So let's just back up a little bit and go to something that Pablo was just talking about the Zoloft and the medications that he was pushing for Pfizer, pushing to mental health and neuro and biological professionals, clinicians, that very often those medications were given to Black people, but they were never designed for Black people. In the bioengineering, Pablo, if you were to go look at the research protocols, the different phase clinical trials, and you look at the n number of people who have been human subjects to test these drugs, you will probably not see very many Black people to create a comparative diagnosis or a comparative
Right.
examination of what are the effects of these medication on a Black person's physiology and neurobiology versus a white person. They were always all created and designed for white people, but they were marketed and promoted heavily to Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Physicians and neurologists were encouraged to prescribe bipolar medication to Black people. Why? Because take, for example, at Bellevue Hospital in New York City, a young Black man in his 20s would go to Bellevue complaining of not being able to sleep and having problems, or he may be taken there for his own safety because he may have been determined to be a harm to himself and to others. The white clinician who has no idea about what it means to be Black and being a young Black male in his 20s will diagnose him with bipolar, prescribe the medication for him, and he's out the door. There is also no follow-up to monitor how the medication is working on him. So suddenly in 2 to 3 weeks, he has gone from a skinny 165 pounds to 200 pounds. And he can't sleep, he can't get an erection, he can't do this, he can't do that. Okay? So when he goes back to the hospital now, there is another clinician who's going to either increase or lower the dose or change the medication, but he's still on that medication for 10 years or more. So consider that young Black man, his entire neurological system has now been transformed by misdiagnosis and misprescripting. You understand what I'm saying? So I just wanted to just address that one component so that if you're going to be feeling guilty, my intention is to make you feel guilty for working for a pharmaceutical company that continues to market to Black and people of color. But we're not here to discuss you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
But coming back to Andy's question, in a Guyanese context, particularly, there are very many different forms of treatment that we can engage with for one of our family members or even for ourselves. First, the first line of treatment, if there is any, is having the knowledge and the information to recognize the signs and the symptoms and what to do, how to intervene. Second, I talked a little earlier, and I think it might have been you, Pablo, or Charmaine, might have alluded to some of the things that our ancestors would have done. Our grandmother would have boiled 2 herbs, 2 pieces of bush, and give it a drink and say, go catch your bed. Okay? And next morning you wake up, you think you're the next best thing to slice bread. You think your grandmother is God come down to earth, because what she just give you for drink and you sleep up, you feel on top of the world.
It was Anthony was talking about the herbal thing.
And so there is the traditional medicines that you could possibly do. But here's the problem with traditional medicines, though, that their efficacy may be limited if you are already on prescribed medication.
Mhm.
So if you are on prescribed medication from the hospital, Georgetown Hospital, or Balwan Singh, or Davis, or St. Joseph, then talk to the doctor first before you go and drink the bush tea. Because sometimes there are chemicals in the bush tea that can either reduce or enhance the efficacy, the effectiveness of the prescribed medication, which can do either more harm or harm to you, the individual who taking that prescribed medication. So check with your doctor first. The other mechanism, the other treatment mechanism is, first of all, as part of your education, is that you do not assume to make decisions for somebody else. So you involve that person in the decision-making process. You advise them you show them, you tell them what the options are. And you encourage them, you advise them, you guide them to making, not coerce, you guide them into making the most appropriate decision for their own care. That means that you ask them, would you like me to go with you to the hospital? Because you need some care. Okay? How would you feel about going to the hospital? How would you feel about talking to someone professionally? And remember that when you talk to this person professionally, what you say to them is between you and them. Nobody ain't got to know, and nobody ain't gonna know. It's between you and them. It's private, it's confidential. Okay? So you present them with a few options and you involve that person in their own care and treatment, so that even if you have to go with them to the hospital and sit down on one of them hard wooden benches in Georgetown Hospital waiting room to see a doctor, you are there with them. Carry 2 bottles of water, maybe get a bottle of coconut water if you can afford it, so y'all can drink and keep cool.
If you can.
You understand what I'm saying?
If I coconut water sound like some kind of bourbon never. If you can
No,
afford
coconut water again is man. Especially what they're selling with them cart with the Don bottle of, that thing is man. But you understand what I'm saying? And so involve the person in their own treatment. But as Anthony was talking, when he talked about bipolar, understanding what bipolar is for his mother, he went to do the work. He researched, he looked up, he read. Sharmin is saying we have the internet. I agree we have the internet, but I want to caution you with the internet. Everybody and the grandmother in Ghana looking at YouTube. And not everything on YouTube is genuine. Not everything on YouTube is true. And so if you're going to go look stuff up on the internet, be very careful what your sources are. Look to places like the World Health Organization. Look to places like the WHO, the European Union. Look to places like the CDC. Look to places like the National Institutes of Health. Look to places like the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association. Look and see what they have to say about something. On the web, if you do a search for, let's say, bipolar, a Google search, there are a number of sites that are going to show up. Look, for example, at anything that says blackhealth.org or webmd.org or .com, because you know that when you go to certain sites and you see that information presented on the site has been reviewed and agreed and okayed by people who are qualified and experienced and trained in that particular subject. You can't go on the internet and go to YouTube and look up a video where somebody tell you, well, this is how you need to treat somebody who got bipolar disorder, and this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to handle them. No. Next thing you know, you are in 12 in jail because you criminally harm somebody else. You understand? Or you do something to a family member that so upset them and alienate them that they don't want to have anything more to do with you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So the idea of treatment also means to understand, what does treatment look like? Because treatment is not the same in the US as it is in Guyana. In Guyana, we got the cultural context on treatment.
It's true.
In the US, it also exists, but it's superimposed. It is overwhelmed by the white establishment and the white pharmacology. In Guyana, we might play with the two sides. Does that make sense?
I have a question. What about Africa? Like, what Africa, clearly that's where our ancestors came from. What's happening in Africa on the herbal medication front in a level that parallels that of the pharmaceutical programs in America and in the West? Like, Africa is a wealthy country. There are many independent countries. What progress has been made in that arena? Because that should be where, if anything is going to happen in terms of normalizing the way, or standardizing, I should say, the way herbs are used to treat Black people, it would be Africa, right? We can't come to a white man country, right, where there's like 200 million white people and 12 million of us, and expect us to be the priority, right? What's happening in Africa? Open question.
Sharmin, you want to take that?
No, before I don't want to touch that. Just wanted to piggyback on something that Antoine raised, because oftentimes, even with diagnosis, there are a group of white men who sits on the board of the DSM-5. And the DSM-5 is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual that actually has a checklist of the symptoms that are used to diagnose a person. A lot of them aren't clinicians or psychiatrists or psychologists. Those diagnoses does not foster our culture, our socialization, the epigenetics of trauma from slavery. Sometimes all our family members need is the support. And if there is a mental diagnosis, my proposition is a holistic approach. You have to address the social aspect, the biopsychosocial aspect of the individual. And that may include talk therapy, medication, um, social activities, the living environment, all of that should play a part in treatment. Any, and I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you, Sharon. I see you bubbling up.
I
There's
want to
some things that
say
that you
something.
really want to drop. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony. While we still got you, go ahead. Anthony, you're freezing again, man.
Yeah, I can recall there was a period of time where I was getting some support because some family in the States where they were aware of what was going on. At one point in time, they asked me to send a name of all the medication that she was taking at a point in time. And it's funny he mentioned that. When I mentioned, I think I can remember one that was Seroquel. I think that's one of the names. There's like 3 medications she was taking one time, but one of them was actually banned from the U.S. and the Canadian market, but it was given to patients in Barbados. So when Antoine mentioned that about medication that will be distributed one place and not to find out like how this is a reject over here, but it's administration to give people over here kind of like anything goes here. So when he in different places.
All right. Let's take up that big point there, Antoine. In terms of, I mean, it's not just with mental health. We know it goes across the board with medicine, where there's some things that are banned in the Western world, and it's used in Africa, etc. When it comes to the mental health area, Antoine, how does that affect people in the third world and Black folks?
So
Hello?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm just gathering all my wild horses in my head to kind of like get my thoughts together because y'all starting a whole session here. I know. So one, let's take a step again to look at what Pablo was just talking about pharmaceuticals and medications in Africa and so forth. And let us remember, Pablo, that the United States CDC has agreements with a few different African countries: Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, Malawi, South Africa, and Angola, and I think Zimbabwe, where they 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 do phase trials, human trials on Black people in Africa in those countries. And let us also remember that while there is a thriving pharmaceutical industry in Europe that has now developed in India, because a lot of pharmaceuticals are being made in India for Europe and for the United States, in Africa, it is discouraged. Pharmaceuticals are instead sent into Africa based on the African country's ability to pay for those medications for their population. We saw that clearly surrounding HIV that was decimating the African continent. It was only until George Bush in one of his, as a Republican, one of his most humane acts pushed for PEPFAR, which provided funding for HIV medications in Africa. But there was one condition to PEPFAR. It was the abstinence. It was the ABC, the abstinence condition, that they could not use condoms or have sex if they want to have HIV medication. How you can tell a black man in a tropical country that he can't have sex and he must always use a condom? You understand what I'm saying? That's one. Let's look at the just concluded, or we're coming out of the COVID pandemic. African continent was the last place on the face of the earth that got any medication. They did not get any medication, and the medication that they got was only because people like Bill Gates put up the money to buy the medications that were sent to Africa. When the US FDA did not approve Johnson & Johnson's medication, that medication was sent to Africa. When Johnson & Johnson did not approve the COVID vaccine and medicines in the US because they found that there were problems in the phase 3 clinical trials, the large production of medications was sent to Africa. So consistently, Africa is seen as the dumping ground for Europe and America pharmaceutical products. And you want to get a parallel of that? Let's say there's a baseball or a basketball game, the championship. What is done? 2 sets of championship t-shirts and hats and merchandise is prepared for each of the 2 teams. Whoever wins, that's what they go with. Whoever loses, what are they going to do with all that merchandise that now said champion, but is not a champion? They ship them off and sell them in Africa. So you see young black boys running around on the street barefoot, boasting Lakers t-shirt. Champion Lakers t-shirt. But in the US, the Lakers were not the champions. So Africa is seen as a dumping ground. Okay? Now, what we also have to understand is that mental illness in Africa has always been a love-hate relationship. Sharmin talked a little earlier about, in the Guyanese context, when something happened to somebody, we said that somebody do you. In Africa, among many African tribes and cultures, there still exists the mentality that anything that is mental health related is that person or their family has angered the gods and the gods curse them. And so they're paying the price for the gods' wrath. Something they did, or their family did, or a grandfather did that is now visited on them. For example, in Nigeria, contemporaneously today, there are several tribes in Nigeria that do not have regard for mental illness, and they will lock up in chains and iron in a cage in a back part of the house a family member who is displaying any abnormal behavior that does not fit in with society, including someone who may display that they may be gay or lesbian or transgender. Because that is also seen as a mental illness. Okay? One of the problems we have with pharmaceuticals in Africa is, just like with Guyana, the medicines that we get in Guyana and that you may get in on the African continent are from Europe or America. They may have already been taken off the market in America, but they're showing up at at that medical center on America Street, that big pharmacy. Okay? And doctors are prescribing it, knowing fully well that it is no longer being used in the US. That the FDA may have pulled it for some particular reason, but it's still showing up in Guyana. In the African continent, some of these pharmaceuticals are showing up there, but people are often also trying to juggle that if, okay, the doctor said I gotta take this, but when I go see the shaman, he said I must drink this tea. He said I must boil these herbs. Nobody in any of that experience has bothered to explain to that poor person, don't mix the two.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna go and get the doctor. Say, the doctor, give me this thing here, so I got to drink this. And you know, we have this thing in Guyana. The doctors give me a prescription and I have to take this medication. That's a badge of honor, you know. I am now officially unwell because the doctor said so. And they're gonna go and get they said, well, you know, I can drink this today and I can drink the bush tea tomorrow. I'm gonna drink this, I can drink a next one, the tablet next week. Cause I want to stretch it out. Cause I might got money for buy another 30 out. That's a problem. Because often, as I discovered in Guyana, doctors prescribe medication. They do not carefully tell you what are some of the side effects. They tell you, oh, take it 1-3 times a day and come back and see me in 2 weeks. Take 1-3 times a day with food or without food. Should I drink? Should I eat pepper? Should I drink anything or use anything with dairy? How is it going to affect my sleep? How is it going to affect my mood? How is it going to affect my behavior? How is it going to affect my concentration? How is it going to affect my sex life? There is no follow-up to the medication. There is no monitoring. And especially with psychotropic medications, which very often must be accompanied by psychotherapy. But medications, psychotropic medications are given, go home and come back in a month. Take this every day and come back in a month. In a month's time, in 2 weeks' time, after that medication is built up a certain level in my bloodstream, I'm now feeling suicidal. The physician, the prescriber did not tell me that this medication is going to make me suicidal. Many psychotropic medications have suicidal side effects. But nobody tells us that. You understand what I'm saying? So I take this medication now every day for a month, and by week 3, I want to go and jump off the Damrara Harbor Bridge. And when I'm scheduled to go see my doctor back at Georgetown Hospital in a month's time, I call to make an appointment. I go and sit down on a hardwood bench inside the waiting area. The doctor ain't come in today. You gotta call back, you gotta come back. And every time I got to go back and forth and come, I gotta spend money. I got to take time off from work and I lose in pay. So isn't it then better that as the holidays come around and I see my family member going through their own drama, or I feel like I can't deal with this, what I can do? I can shut down. I can always go and drink 2 beer. I could always go and drink some Guinness. I could always go and drink some rum and just blank everything out. Tomorrow I'm gonna wake up, I can deal with it tomorrow when I wake up. Or I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing myself until I'm completely exhausted. Because I can't afford the time, the energy, the money, and the side effects of those medications to go to Georgetown Hospital to get a tablet. So you understand the cycle that I'm caught in? Y'all still awake?
We listening keenly. We listening keenly. Obviously, there's only so much we can touch on. In this. This is a very big, broad topic. But I think we've gotten a mouthful and earful from Charmin, from Antoine, Anthony's personal story, which certainly would have connected to all of us, and Pablo's experience with the big Pfizer, as he says.
Andy,
I want to close off with a question that
hang on.
deals with.
Andy, hang on. Before you close off,
Oh,
I think that it is imperative for this conversation that we're talking about mental illness and mental health before the holidays, that we spend some time, first of all, I'm surprised we didn't do this at the beginning. I completely forgot, got caught up with y'all and y'all nonsense. For us to spend some time in silence to remember the 5 soldiers who died in the helicopter crash.
okay.
But there are 2 aspects to the holidays that I want us to pay careful attention to. And I think it might have been Charmaine or Pablo who alluded to this about SAD, seasonal affective disorder, is that for many of our family members, and I hinted at it a little bit when I was talking about your mother or your parent just suddenly getting caught up and doing stuff and just leave me alone, don't bother me, is that as holidays approach, events that we may have experienced come back and slap us upside our head and remind us that they existed. Traumas that we may have experienced around the holidays, including deaths of loved ones and family members. Let us remember, for example, that these holidays coming up, there are 20 children's families in Madhya area, Peruni area, who will not have their children to celebrate the holidays with. Let us remember the 5 soldiers' families who will now be thinking of funerals and trying to come to terms with and grieve for the loss of their family members over these holidays. The broken plans, the broken promises, the plans and the promises that are no longer going to be fulfilled. Okay? Let us remember that for many people right now in Guyana, it is very, very hard. Just life itself, just living every single day is so hard that itself is traumatic for them.
Yeah. And Antoine,
Hang on,
I was,
hang
I
on.
was.
No, hang on.
Mhm.
The other part of this that I want us to pay attention to is because of the stresses that the holidays put on us, we are likely to see an increase in domestic and intimate partner violence. Okay? And if for 1 minute we were to think that men only beat women, there are women who also beat men. And so there's also occasions of sexual assault and sexual abuse that take place during these times, where someone may sexually abuse another, a family member, as a form, as a way of saying, if you want a Christmas gift, you gotta give me a little bit. Okay? Or you gotta do what I tell you, and you don't tell nobody. So let us consider that as we talk about going into the holidays and celebrating these holidays, what are some of the undercurrents that are driving in our communities today And many of our Guyanese community are struggling and having it real hard. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Antoine, basically my final question, it wasn't with regard to the 5 so, but it was relevant to that kind of situation. So we will do, Antoine, you brought it up. I think it was a good idea. You will lead us into a moment of silence, and then I will ask the final question. Antoine.
So let's just take a moment to be quiet, to place ourselves and be present exactly where we are tonight. And for those of you who may be listening online, join me, please, and let's place ourselves and be present. Let's think about this year. Let's think about the things that we achieved and the things that we did not achieve. Let us bring into mind those we have lost this year, those who are no longer going to be with us. And for Guyanese, we know what a Guyanese Christmas is. And that person is not going to be there to share it with us. But when we sit down to eat and we break open a bottle of rum, let's pour a little bit in the cap and throw it over. We should throw it in the corner by the door and say, and call the name, because name is ownership, name is possession, name is belonging. And you're bringing that past person into the home, in with you. Let us be grateful for all that we have. And remember that there are many who do not have. And whatever we can do to share what we have with someone else. As you know, your mother does always say she can add another handful of rice just in case somebody come in that could get something to eat. Cook a little extra and reach out to somebody who you may know but may not have anyone, and invite them to come over and make that person feel like a king or a queen, a prince. Make them feel welcome. And sit with them and make them feel that they belong, because all we want to do is to belong.
Thank you for that,
Thank you.
Antoine. Thank you so much for that. Sharmin, I'm going to give you the closing question, and it concerns that kind of situation where we're happy we're going along, everything everything is okay. The money is there to buy stuff, and Christmas is looking good. And then bam, tragedy strikes. What's your advice for someone in that kind of situation who did not anticipate, expect anything, any form of tragedy to really strike, and certainly not something like that? How does one cope?
So, thank you for that question. Number one, seek professional help. consider reaching out to a mental health professional, um, someone that you can sit and talk to and process the trauma. Because oftentimes when trauma occurs and it's not dealt with, it becomes suppressed and is added on old trauma. And you know, there's a lot of problems. So seek help and get trauma therapy. Understand that what you are experiencing is real. There is this Guyanese, and I don't want to just label it to Guyanese. I would say black people. Hey, we just get over things quick, or I can get over it. Your experience is real, so validate it. What you're feeling is real. Embrace it, but, and I'm going to emphasize that, get professional help. Create, if you don't already have, a support system. Support systems are important. Community is important. We heal faster in community. Find a space where you can express yourself. Um, there is this, we were socialized that we don't air our dirty laundry in public, and it has traumatized us to the point where we don't know how to express our feelings because we were told that, and we were told to shut up so many times. You have to trust someone. You may have to challenge your belief system, because you might have been socialized in a home where the belief system is that whatever happened, we have to overcome it and move on. That is true, but it's how you overcome it. You have to give it time to process and stay safe, and create a self-care program for yourself. Run, walk, um, think about something that you had liked when you were a child. Get a coloring book. It's not just for children, it's very therapeutic. Get a coloring book. Um, do something that you enjoy that will help you to concentrate. Um, but trauma is real, and trauma has long lasting effects that can take you to places that you can't handle. So process it and put all the things that I have identified, because that's a holistic approach, and you'll be fine. And embrace the time. Grieving also, it's a process. Trauma happens instantly, but overcoming it is not instantaneous.
Okay, thank you for that, Sharmin. I'll close with Anthony. Anthony, as the holidays is coming up, you more close to your mom. How do you cope? How do you deal, with this time of the year? What do you say to yourself? What do you sing to yourself? How do you cope?
He's muted.
More bearable than before, because my mom transitioned since 2018. The period shortly after that would have been the most challenging ones. Every year you get more stronger in dealing with the reality that she's gone and stuff like that. But truthfully, there isn't a day don't study my mom. That's the truth. So I don't necessarily have to wait on Christmas and special occasion, because she was so much part of my life with that. A lot of stuff that I do in terms of my personal life. She was the main part of a lot of support to my career. And back home, the parents we have like every time I go there, there's very little I could do that I don't actually study my mom.
Hmm.
You understand? Because it's basically like it was my mom most of my life, kind of like single parent raised in terms of mama. All the time, my grandparents, some support from my uncles and aunt. You understand? But what I would say is I learned to embrace the positives in terms of what I learned from my mom that I carry on with. Like, people got the saying, carry on the baton. And that keeps me striving. And with my kids now, they actually kind of like give me that extra encouragement to like, you know what? You really need to do certain things a little more different with them now, or from my experience, because one of the things I try to do in my kids is talk a lot. I don't play the hiding thing game and choose certain things because I believe if you put certain things in awareness from early, some person might not gravitate totally to what you're saying, but people don't ever forget what you say. Because when I was young, my grandmother said a lot to me. At the moment of time, man, granny, you miserable thing. I live to see a lot of those things I live by right now because I saw the value afterwards, not at the moment it was shared. So I just saying and said people don't usually forget things that are told. You don't forget the bad things that people do, you don't forget the good things. So my thing is about life now is like being very supportive, putting things of substance out there that people could benefit and use as time goes on. It's not about always the present. You understand? Like some of these experiences, like having a library where you could go back and pick up a book as a reference. But the only thing now is real life experience. So then your memory will be like the reference, but is it's still an ongoing journey.
Mhm.
You understand? It's still because there's a lot that I'm still learning, and everything does not come the same time. You understand? Everything don't come the same time. So I'm still in that process of, but I can't literally say like I actually over that experience.
Right, right.
I learned to cope with it better. You understand? But I'm not already. It was too deep. It was too
Okay.
deep.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. Pablo, your closing words, and Antoine, and your closing words, and we're out.
Yeah. My closing words is that it's my the outlook on life is that we're all fortunate to be here where we are, right? Because there's many of our friends and our loved ones who are not here, right?
True.
And so it's a blessing to be here. But we need each other, right? Some of us are smart, some of us are not as smart, or some of us are, we have different personalities. We may be wealthy, we may be poor, we may be struggling. So I think we need each other and humanity, caring, having compassion. I have three principles that I try to live by. It's to be productive, to be compassionate, and to be honorable, right? And I think if you embrace those things, if you're compassionate, the C principle, it means that you are going to care about someone who is in your circle. If you can help them, you will. Even if you can't help them materially, you can help them with your time. Make a phone call, right? Have a conversation, right? Make them feel that they can call you at any time. And I think if we embrace those principles and those habits, that the world is going to be a better place. And depression would be much easier to handle for you or somebody in your circle who's experiencing it.
True.
So I will
Okay,
close
thank
with
you for
that.
that, Pablo. Antoine, take us out.
I just want to pick up a little bit and continue from what Charmaine was talking about our self-care. And again, I go back to the stresses that these holidays can visit on us. And so let me put it like this: unaddressed stress leads to anxiety. Unaddressed anxiety
Mm,
accumulates and leads to depression.
mm,
Depression, if it's unaddressed, can lead to suicidality, to thoughts, to attempts, and completion. The ways in which we may practice or try to take our lives varies. And these holidays can force us on that path, on that continuum. And so I would urge that not just us here, but those who are listening and whoever may view these 2 hours of this particular show, because this should be going for 2 hours. But if we can, if we can look back at this and we can say, how do I take care of myself during this holiday period? When I'm feeling the pressure and the stress of buying and providing and taking care of, and the rent still got to pay, and the gas and the light still got to pay, and I still got to find think about money for school fees next year, and all these different things got to be doing, and I still am expected to provide. So where am I in all this madness that's going on? Take some time for you.
Me time.
If you have a standpipe in the yard, when I'm in Guyana, I like bathing in the yard at the standpipe in the hot afternoon sun, because that does feel good. Or you get a place to go up the creek in Guyana for a swim. Take a trip for the weekend and go, or one of the days, just take a one day and pull a couple of people together if you can afford it and go for a trip to the creek and swim and just relax. Cook a nice meal. Listen to some music. Guyanese like the music. Put on some music and sing and dance. None of y'all in the wrong way I live in here because it's a madness in the apartment. Take care of yourself. Treat yourself good.
mhm,
Be gentle with yourself. But here now, speak kindly to yourself, because we have been conditioned to judge and condemn and come down upon ourselves because that's what others have done to us. No, when you get up in the morning and you look yourself in the mirror, hey, you're looking good. When you cook and you eat something, hey, this tastes good. Put down the phone when you're eating and concentrate on the flavors and the juices and the taste and the spices in the food and enjoy it. Take care of yourself. Take care of you so that when January 6th or January 12th or January 13th comes around, you're not as frazzled.
mhm,
You're not as stressed. You're not anxious. Because if you take care of yourself from now, you also will see that you're able to sleep better at night. Turn off the TV, put down the phone, pull down the net and tuck in the net and go under your and go and lie down and sleep. Do some deep breathing when you lie down. Breathe so deeply that when you breathe in and you breathe out, all your pores must raise. Because when your pores raise, is your brain telling your body, I am calming down. Are we good?
We good, Antoine. Uh, I see, Sharmin, I know, but you see, Lila, that the meaning that you saw from Antoine. Gonna be another conversation, but the former Jesuit to him coming out there. You see, you see how he took you to a place there? Yeah. Anyway, thank you for that, Antoine. And thank you, Petal, and all the other guys who commented in the chat. Petal, Yanet, Earl, Kingston, Cornel, Shum. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Please do share this podcast after we're done. There are a lot of great points that were made, so please continue to share. All right, there's definitely something you're going to get from this one. Antoine, thank you. Sharmin, well, we finally met up online. Thank you so much for joining us. Anthony in BVI,
Thank
thanks for
you.
coming on board. And Pablo, the man in Atlanta, Georgia. All right, folks.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is all
you.
for now. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Have a
Is one little town in Bethlehem where Jesus Christ he born, and in the straw the baby lay, while all the stars are shine, and in we darkness Jesus appear for save we all. He get a cure for wash we clean. This baby born tonight. A merry joy we celebrate when God gave she a child. We fall asleep, the angels keep guarding the sky down there. All the stars in heaven are saying the Savior come. Their praise for Christ till all we hearts believe and practice peace. Them quiet bard, them silent bard, when Jesus' face reveal the love God gave for all of we when he descend his son, and when he come in glory, and when he come for we, let Christ come in, he rapping still, let Christ come in tonight. Is one little town in Bethlehem when Jesus Christ he born, for wash we clean from all we sin and grow in all the way. The angels sing he glory, them donna bring good news. O Christ coming this Christmas night, reborn we tonight. O Christ coming this Christmas night, reborn